Hi guys, and welcome to the third installment of this video series, Bodybuilding Prep, a complete guide. In this video today, we're going to go over nutrition. So, a complete rundown and summary of the nutrition protocol I followed for my prep. We're also going to discuss the pros and cons of this protocol and compare it to other commonly used bodybuilding prep diets. Okay guys, so the dieting approach that I employed for this contest prep is called flexible dieting. So pretty much flexible dieting is a system, just like periodization is a system or a training program. It is the ability to account for the calories you consume and then make adjustments week by week based on how your body composition is changing. So flexible dieting, although the word flexible is followed by dieting, it is not necessarily a diet. It's a system of counting calories and being accountable for the calories you consume and having a daily goal. So that daily calorie goal is going to steer the ship in the direction of your body composition goal. So in my case, I tracked my calories for about 2 months prior to starting my contest prep. So whilst I was in a calorie surplus, and this allowed me to pretty much see where I was and how many calories I needed in order to maintain my body weight or be in a slight lean gaining phase. So that's very vital before you initiate a weight loss period, is to just see where you are and how many calories you actually need in order to maintain that body weight. So in starting the fat loss process, what we then did was we took that maintenance calories and week by week reduced it to where we started to see fat loss. Okay, and fat loss was recorded through body weight reductions. Okay, you can also use a waist measurement or a skin fold, but a scale and a body weight measurement is going to be the most practical and the most ideal in terms of everyday use. So we tracked it through week by week progression of my calorie intake compared to my weight. So as my calories reduced, obviously, ideally, my weight would reduce. Okay, so that's item number 1, calories. So the second item that we want to consider in regards to weight loss and maintaining as much muscle as possible while we lose the fat are our macronutrients. So macronutrient profile is composed of protein, number 1, carbs, number 2, and fat, number 3. There's also alcohol, but we won't discuss that in this episode. So the first macronutrient we're going to discuss is protein. Now the general rule of thumb is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. In my prep, I was consuming close to 230, and then when I got down to the lower percentages of body fat, we actually increased it closer to 240, 250. Now the reasoning for this is that as your body weight declines and the amount of fat you have declines, in order to maintain as much muscle as possible, your optimal consumption of protein will actually increase. But for the novice or for someone just starting out in the weight loss process, go by the general rule of thumb of 1 gram per pound of body weight. So the second thing we want to consider when building up this calorie goal is carbohydrate consumption. Now, carbs are going to be determined on your body weight, your numerous factors, okay? Pretty much, metabolic rate is going to be the biggest determinant, and that's also going to be a big determinant of the calories you'll actually be consuming throughout your prep. So for me, being a bigger guy and having a high metabolic capacity, my carbohydrates never dropped below 200 in my prep. And that's not a good or bad thing, that's just what I was able to lose weight on, and then also that helped me sustain my training performance and recovery. So a complete drop in carbs, there are some diets that do advocate that, complete drop in carbs. Although that they may have benefits, in terms of athletic performance and training in the gym, carbohydrate sources are still very important. So the thing with flexible dieting is we're not neglecting anything. So carbs are still important. Your intake is going to be determined on your metabolic rate and how quickly you burn through food, pretty much. General rule of thumb when we're composing this end calorie goal is around 40 to 60% of your daily intake of calories. Okay guys, so lastly for this list of macronutrients, we want to discuss fat intake. Now, fat intake is roughly going to be 15 to 30% of that end daily calorie goal. For me, I was on the lower end of that spectrum, so I was probably closer to 20%, just because I feel like I responded better to a high carbohydrate, high protein diet. That's not to say I discarded fats completely. Still getting in good sources of fats due to their benefits with hormone regulation, etc., and just general health. But that's another beauty of flexible dieting, is if you're more adherent to a diet higher in carbs or a diet higher in fats, then you can switch around the macros and utilize whatever's going to be more sustainable for you. But general rule of thumb for fat intake is 15 to 30% of that end calorie goal. So just one thing I wanted to add in terms of fat intake is a lot of times when your fat intake gets to the lower end of the spectrum and you end up on fairly low fat, it can affect the psychology of the athlete, and it can affect that hormone regulation and can lead to effects such as loss of libido and other probably more detrimental effects in female figure, bikini, bodybuilding competitors, etc. So that's one thing you want to be careful of, and if you do experience such symptoms, you might want to discuss with your coach, or you yourself might want to increase the fat intake and compensate by reducing carbohydrates. Okay, so the next thing to be discussed is fiber and micronutrient intake. Now, in terms of body composition, daily activity levels, calories and macronutrients are going to be the main drivers of body composition, okay, strictly speaking. Having said that though, we still want to prioritize our fiber and micronutrient intake, because that's going to add to our overall well-being and help us feel good for training and for continuing on with the diet. So they're going to add to the sustainability of the diet. So in terms of fiber intake, we want to be shooting for anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of fiber. Okay, so I've constructed a bit of a pros and cons list on flexible dieting. Now, I am a little bit biased, so this pros side is a little bit more content in the pros compared to the cons. The reason I'm biased is just because this system worked for me. Okay, I think we can all agree that I got in fairly good condition and that I kept improving from my first show all the way through to my third. Okay, reducing that body fat percentage and also maintaining as much muscle as possible while staying very adherent to my dieting protocol. So let's just go through a quick pros and cons based on my experience. Okay guys, so let's go through some pros first. So number one on my list of pros is accuracy. So this dieting protocol is incredibly accurate. You have a lot of control over your body composition and where you want to push it. Okay, so that Excel spreadsheet that we discussed in the previous video is going to be, you're going to live and die by that. So looking at how your weight or skin fold measurement, whatever measurement of body fat you choose to use, how that is changing over time in comparison to your caloric intake is going to give you an incredibly accurate picture of where you are, and also how your body reacts to certain intakes of calories and certain adjustments in fats, carbohydrates, protein, etc. So yeah, flexible dieting is very accurate, and you know, if you're taking the time to track your intake, you're going to reap the rewards of having a lot of control over your body composition. So number 2 on this list is sustainability. So flexible dieting is notorious for being, like I said before, not a diet, but a sustainable approach to taking your body composition where you want it to go. Okay, it's a system as opposed to a diet of counting calories. Okay, this means that in terms of dealing with cravings and other things that might completely derail other dieting approaches, flexible dieting allows you to maybe quote unquote cheat on your diet, but not cheat because you're going to account for it in your calories. Okay, so it promotes a more sustainable approach and reduces the likelihood of you going out and binging just because you get a craving or because you talk yourself into you earning a cheat meal. So yes, we prioritize good foods that are going to help training and recovery. Having said that, if we do need to deal with adherence issues, flexible dieting allows us to maybe have a Tim Tam or a few and account for that in our daily calorie goal, as opposed to being on a strict clean eating diet, eating a Tim Tam and then feeling like you've cheated and then going and eating the whole packet. So it's a way of it's more of a pragmatic approach to dieting, and that makes it more sustainable. So number 4 is the social side of it, and that sort of ties into sustainability. So it allows you to actually go out and eat, and yes, when you're in the later stages of contest prep and you're being very, very accurate, okay, you're knowing to the absolute last number where your macros are or where your calories are. When you're maybe further out from competition or even in the off season, flexible dieting allows you to go out and eat with friends and account for everything into your daily calorie goal, and that just makes it more sustainable and means you're not, you know, at the restaurant eating a Tupperware of chicken and broccoli when everyone else is having, you know, enjoying some sushi or whatever. So I found for me, especially in my off season, that just tracking my caloric intake means that I can go out and enjoy social events without having to stress about completely going off track with my diet. Okay, so like we said with control and accuracy, flexible dieting allows you to diet, if you do it over a long period of time that is, on the most amount of calories possible. Okay, so this is going to have a huge benefit in terms of training outcomes and in terms of your recovery. Being able to diet on the most amount of calories and lose weight on the most amount of calories possible is extremely effective. So this of course means that we want to avoid crash dieting or yo-yo dieting, and we want to make sure either our cut or our lean gaining phase is a nice slow progression, and that we're keeping track of the caloric intake over time, and making sure we're not making any huge extreme jumps, and that ties in with accuracy and control over your dieting approach. Okay guys, so going into some cons of this diet, like I said, fiber and micronutrients in terms purely of body composition aren't the driving factors that are going to determine how you look on stage. However, we still want to prioritize them. So this is where I see the division between quote-unquote clean eating and if it fits your macros, is I actually think both sides have kind of got it wrong. Yes, there are no foods that are going to make you lose weight. Okay, that's where that's the sort of fallacy that eating foods that are said to be good for you, that they're actually going to help you lose weight. Okay, that's false. There are no negative energy foods. Okay, all foods carry calories. Having said that though, we want to be making sure we have adequate amounts of fiber and that we're not just filling up our daily calorie goals with protein shakes and junk. Okay, because that's not going to help our training and it's not going to be very healthy. So we need to be smart about this. We need to take a balanced approach of art and science and make sure that we're just being responsible and adhering to a hierarchy of needs, calories, macronutrients, timing, supplements, etc. So leading on from that, another thing that isn't a major concern is timing and frequency. So this has to do with our hierarchy of needs. So in terms of body composition, timing and frequency are higher up the pyramid, so are supplements, in determining where our body fat is and where our sort of muscle maintenance / muscle gaining potentials are. So your caloric intake and your macronutrients are going to determine that. Okay, timing and frequency, yes, they're going to play roles, but we want to stress about them less and make sure that we're on top of our caloric intake and just prioritizing that. Okay, so another perceived negative of dieting, of flexible dieting, is the fact that the ability to eat foods that aren't considered clean or healthy, that may lead to further cravings or even binging. Now, this is correct. If you have access to those foods, you're probably more likely to get cravings for them in the future. But in terms of getting on a bodybuilding stage, it's something that you don't do for very long in your life, and you will probably have to make sacrifices along the way. And flexible dieting, just by virtue of the fact that your calories are going to get quite low during that time, you're probably not going to be craving, or you will be craving, but regardless of whether you're craving or not, your calories are going to be made up of mostly quote-unquote clean foods or foods that are high in fiber and lean meats. So there's a chance of binge eating and you're going to get cravings either way. So you might as well be incredibly accurate with your dieting and know exactly where your calories are. And if you do happen to slip up and eat something that might not be great and maybe very calorie dense, you can account for that and then continue forward and pretty much have no negative effects in terms of your body composition. Okay. On the contrary, if you don't know where your calories are and you have something that's bad, then there's a high chance of going, okay, I've screwed up, I'm just going to go and eat the whole packet now. So I think that, like I said, we need to have a sensible approach to this, and flexible dieting and being accountable for your calories is the most sensible way to go about things. One thing I wanted to add is that flexible dieting, and if it fits your macros, and clean eating aren't mutually exclusive. Okay, you can be a clean eater and count your calories, count your macros, be very accurate with where you want to steer your body composition, and yeah, that's fine. You can eat clean, you can eat paleo, you can eat whatever. It's a system. So there's this fallacy and this misconception that people that do flexible dieting are just eating Tim Tams and protein shakes all day. That is not the case. Okay, I think they're not mutually exclusive. We need to look at flexible dieting as a system of counting calories and not as what can I fill up my calories with today and make my protein. So, okay guys, so that's the video on nutrition. Hope that was somewhat easy to follow and that you learnt something. If you disagree with anything I said or want to rebut some of the comments I made throughout the video, then please leave a comment below. Even if you're a friend, and you disagree, let's have a discussion about it. Okay, that's what I know, that nutrition is a bit of a hot topic in the industry at the moment. So I think we can all get a lot out of discussing it more and more and sharing ideas. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. There's some good content coming. Thanks, guys.